Looking very professional.
We haven't been live in a little while, but I'm happy to be live again with my friend Jack Daly today.
Hey, Bill. Pleasure to be here.
So, I don't know about you, but I think a lot of us struggle with the notion of having it all. What it takes to have fun and find fulfillment and have a full life hitting on all cylinders. That's the topic of today. The premise, the notion is that you actually can have it all, but it does take some thoughtful design.
So there's no question. I have been accused by many people of living an intentional life. And I don't take it as a negative. I take it as a positive. And anytime somebody tells me that, I back and go, absolutely. Because I will tell you, I'm a week away from turning 73. And 60 years ago, I learned how to live a life intentionally and why one would want to do that.
All right, hang on. My name is Bill Gallagher. This is the Scaling Up Business Podcast. I want to thank all of our listeners, viewers for coming back, joining us once again. I'm joined today by Jack Daly, my good friend, who's really become my friend over the years through our connection around the EO programs and speaking and that kind of thing. So you guys, Jack Daly is an extraordinary human being, and he spent a lot of his more recent life as a sales trainer and author. He's written, this is his 10th book now. He recently delivered an annual sales kickoff for one of my clients to rave reviews, but he has a background as a CEO and entrepreneur. He's grown companies across the country, sales organizations through way more folks than you probably have on your team. And he's taken companies public when that was a really a big deal, not in the SPAC era of things, right? He's just like, he'll set the bar pretty high for you. So I just want to preface the conversation that Jack's version of a great life might not be your version. In fact, some people will hear it and find it a little intimidating, but don't get discouraged. This is an opportunity for you to design your life and have what you really want, not necessarily Jack's version of it, but I want you to allow yourself to be inspired by everything. Jack, welcome to the show.
Bill, it's a joy to be here. I wish I was live. And when I mean live, I'm talking about a big, tough, nice hug, but I'm not. So this will have to do. But this is a topic that I am extremely passionate about, having started this journey called Living Life by Intentionality at the age of 13. And literally...
Wait, before you go back to 13, give folks kind of a little picture of some of the things. So Ironmans, entrepreneurs, libraries, parks, like give a little bit of list of some of the jet fighters flying.
Okay, that's fine. Imagine being able to say you ran 100 marathons, but if you scaled that back, how about one in all 50 states and one in all 7 continents? There's less than 200 people that I have discovered that have done the combo of that. Here's one. How about flying a jet fighter plane with 0 flying instructions? This is crazy stuff. The world's largest bungee jump, the shark diving off of the coast of Africa, Ironman, 15 times when I didn't know how to swim at 58 years old, building 6 companies from scratch into national firms, selling a couple to Wall Street. Like the list just goes on and on and on. And quite frankly, there's not a lot accidental that's in the story.
Yeah. No, he wasn't talking about other people. Jack was talking about Jack's life there, right? These are some of the extraordinary things he did. And I know that as starting out when I went to coach full time, your conversation was one of a handful that really informed me. And you said, I mean, I've long been a believer in living life by design, and my list is not quite like yours, but I have things that I am very passionate about. And but the notion of designing in what you want along with your work and having it all work together having a yes and kind of a life, not an either or kind of a reality.
Yeah, one of my favorite books is Jim Collins' Built to Last.
Yeah.
And he talked about the tyranny of the or and the joy of the and. It's not build a successful business or have a successful life. It's building a successful business and having an exceptional life. And you can do both. We're only on this planet one time. That's my philosophy. Why not make
that we know of?
Yeah, right. And so I've always pursued my passion business wise, and I continue to do that today as a coach and speaker and so forth. But at the end of the day, one of the reasons that we do what we do in our business, I think, is to give us the fuel, the money, if you will, to pursue whatever turns our jets on, in terms of the way we describe an exceptional life.
Yeah. So let's talk about this decision at the age of 13. I think a lot of decisions in those kinds of years are built of and based in shame and failure. I think about some of the things that happened to me, but there's also some moments of genius and insight. Talk about your insight decision and take us back now to young Jack.
Yeah. So I'm the oldest of 5 kids. All my siblings are still with us. And we grew up in a middle class at best family. I have a brother who's 3 years younger than I am. And I don't think he ever got his own clothes. He just lived in my house. And 3 of my 4 siblings are delivering mail for the U.S. Postal Service today. That's the environment, right? And at 13,
it's regular people, right? Like it's yeah,
right. Nothing wrong. It just is. And at 13, I took a job at a country club to be a caddy, and I thought I knew what the job was. Like carry the clubs, find the ball, watch the ball, rake the trap, tend the pin. And after about 10 days at the country club, I realized this was a much bigger thing. You see, there were people playing golf on Wednesdays. Like Wednesday, aren't you supposed to be working on Wednesday? The same guy's playing golf on Friday. He's playing on the weekend. And when I take his clubs out of his car, it's a high-end, really nice-looking car. And sometimes I'm walking down the fairway and the guy says, hey, and I live in that house, and it's a big estate home with a swimming pool built in and all. Now, let me describe my life. My dad worked 6 days a week just to put food on the table. The car was a 9-passenger station wagon, probably hundreds of thousands of miles on it, was in the garage getting fixed more than it was in use. Never played golf. And I'm like, there's a different life out there. And I'd love to find out how these people are living this life, because this is a life that's more appealing than what my dad's living. But I probably would never get a chance to ask them anything. I probably couldn't get into their office or wherever they were. But then it dawned on me, they came to my office. It was called the golf course. You see, we walked side by side for 4.5 hours. So I developed a list of questions. Here are the questions I'm going to ask every person that I caddy. And I want you to imagine me asking you, like, how did you become so successful? If you had to do it over again, what would you do different? What would you tell a 13-year-old? These were the types of questions. Now, you go into the clubhouse after the round of golf, and you see a buddy of yours at the bar, and you order a beer, and you go, hey, you ever had that Daly kid carry your bag? Oh, yeah. Did he ask you the questions? And they'd have a good row of it. And then, hey, I'm going to ask for him again and see what he's doing with the questions. So I learned what I call the secrets of success from the interview process with probably about 50 members of the golf club.
Isn't that interesting, right? Looking at that and saying, wait a minute, I want to be like these people. I want to learn from this situation, right? And it's funny, we think of like, oh, okay, our parents only gave us this. But in reality, your parents, the community, your birthright, like whatever, gave you all of that, including the job and the opportunity to do that. And you looked at that and you saw it and you said, what could I learn from this? And I think whether you're 13 or 30, you can stop and look around you and ask yourself, like, what kind of life do you want to live? And what is there to learn from this situation?
What you just said, Bill, is so spot on. In fact, in my new book, Jack Daly's Life by Design, I have a chapter on just that issue, that I was afraid that people would look and read the book and say, I wish I had this earlier in life. It's too late for me. And so I just tell people about Colonel Sanders and the age he was before he did Kentucky Fried Chicken. Ray Kroc was in his 50s with McDonald's, Julia Child, Martha Stewart. And you just rattle off all of these names of people that didn't really hit their zone until they were past the age of 50. I'm about to turn 73 any day now, and I can tell you my best days are ahead of me. The things I've already done are going to pale in comparison to what's ahead for me. So it's an attitudinal. It's how do you embrace life?
Yeah. So so wherever you are, all roads have led you to this moment. They've given you certain lessons and challenges and gifts and that kind of thing. And in each and every moment, there's an opportunity to stop and consider what your life is all about. Talk to us about this bucket list. How do you come up with the things that you take on? How do you even think about wanting them? How do you make your choices about what you want in life?
Be alert to life. First of all, the bucket list started when I was in my mid-20s, and I called it my life list. From age of 13, I had my goals, and I was following a process of goals in 4 dimensions of my life. What did I want to look like financially at the age of 30? What did I want to look like at the age of 30 professionally? What did I want my family to look like at the age of 30? And what did I want to look like education-wise? And if I could take just those 4 areas and map something out, that would be great. So I was following that process, which I learned at the country club from my interviews. But in my mid-20s, I'm like, what could I add that would be like really cool stuff besides the annual goals in the 4 buckets? And so I just scratched it out on a pad and said, this is going to be my life list. Then the movie came out, Bucket List, and I'm like, that's a cooler term than mine. So I changed my life list to Bucket List. And how do I put things on there? I'm always open to all kinds of experiences. As an example, a joint friend of ours, Randy Cohen, he posts on social media pictures of himself in Pamplona running with the Bulls. And he had this full white gala outfit on with a red sash and all. And I'm like, I got to put that on my bucket list, right? I was running the LA Marathon. It was my 10th marathon, and it was my 4th time running LA Marathon. And a guy passes me in the marathon, and on the back of his shirt, it says, I ran a marathon in all 50 states. So I catch up with the guy, and I said, what's up with the 50 states? He said, there's a club on the internet called the 50 Staters, and check it out. So I went after the race and looked it up, and I'm like, wow, that's a cool thing to add to my bucket list. I'm going to run a marathon in all 50 states. Well, then I'm running another marathon in my journey, and another guy's he's run the 7 continents, and I'm like, that's got to go on the bucket list. I was watching on television the Ironman World Championship, and Julie Moss, look up the YouTube of her, but she's famous because she was winning the Ironman World Championship up till about 100 yards, and then her legs gave out, and she came in second, but she crawled across the finish line. And when I saw it, I just said, my God, what we're capable of doing. I wonder if I could do something like that. And within a week, I said, I'm going to do that. I put it on my bucket list. By the way, I put that on my bucket list 30 years before I actually took on the Ironman, because at that stage of my life, I was building companies and I had a responsibility for employees. I had a young family. I wanted to spend time with my family, and Ironman training is awfully selfish, and that sport is selfish because it takes so much time. So my focus and what success meant is different at different stages of my life. And so much on my bucket list has not really taken place until kind of the last 25% of my life to date, because I don't have employees and my kids are gone. And so I'm not asking anybody to make any sacrifices.
Let's talk about it for just a pause for just a second. I think that so I hear like being curious and open to new experiences and like going for things. And I understand, I certainly resonate identify with this idea of seeing something and going, yeah, I think I'd like to try that. I saw there's a Century Club, and it's people who've visited 100 countries or more. And so I said, I've been a lot of places. I wonder where I'm at. And so I tallied it up, and I think I was like at 57 or something like that. And then I'm like, I should get to 75 first, which is the first entry, and then get to 100. And how do I get to 100? And how many countries could I start to tech up? And so if I hear about an opportunity to do something in a new country, I'm a little more like, I'm a little more receptive, a little more willing to schedule or discount or whatever to get there. And
exactly,
do that.
It's exactly the process that you just described, how these things get on my list.
Okay, but here's the other thing. So I, like you, have done a number of triathlons. I did about 45 of these endurance events, mostly triathlons, a few marathons, and I've never done a full Ironman. And to be honest, I didn't really want to. It just sounded like too much work to me. Right. But I was inspired by something at a moment when I was living my life mostly on the couch, trying to deal being a dad and running my business. And I'm like, no, more. I want more. And after the first one, then I'm like, this is really cool. And then after a couple of them, I realized, you know what? I'm never actually going to be great at these things. I'm always going to be slow. So why am I doing this? Right. And I realize for me, it's often like twofold. One of them is like the personal enjoyment, the goal, the personal growth and development, my own personal best, like that kind of thing. Yep. But the other is truly like the fulfillment side of things. And that is, as I be out on a Saturday running down, my middle-aged self, running down in my plodding pace, I think about the other runners I see and what they meant to me. And then I realize, no, I am a shining example of what it means to be human for others. And then I like lift my head up a little higher. I run a little quicker. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not just here for me in this moment. I'm for both. Right. And I hear that again and again in your stories. Like there's things you're going for, but then you're also sharing yourself and your life in a way that is a beacon for others.
People ask me all the time, Bill, why are you so public with your life? And Karen, she came into my life just a little over a couple of years ago after losing my wife, Bonnie, who we were married for 47 years, as you know, and she died from cancer. And then this 20 plus year client, Karen, and I found ourselves in a romantic relationship. And when she moved in, and while we're not legally married, we articulate as if we are and refer to each other as husband and wife. But she queried me on, man, you're so public with everything. What's up with that? And I said, well, I'm going to share with you emails, text, Facebook private message, mail, snail mail of every day, one or two or more pieces are coming to me saying, thank you for doing this. You've inspired me to get off the couch. You've inspired me to go down and make a blood donation at the Red Cross. And so I have assembled over the last 25 years a good following of people, and I'm upping their game. So it's just not for me. I enjoy the things that I'm doing, but now I feel as though, gosh, today, if I post the fact that I just spent an hour and a half on the rowing machine this morning, and maybe it'll jar somebody and say, you know what, I gotta go out and at least take a 3-mile walk. Like, it doesn't really matter what it is. Just, hey, let's go do something, right?
Yes. Let's do something. Yeah. And that noticing your impact, I think also it's probably reasonable to think that for every one of those letters that you've gotten, there's at least 10 more that you impacted, inspired, prompted to action that didn't write you a letter. But
I say that as well, for sure. There is no question about it. And it touches me emotionally. I was watching Shark Tank the other night on TV, and there was a gal that was 12 years on the show that was so well present, so well prepared, and had done some incredible things with her life. And Karen and I were sitting on the couch together, and Karen looked over at me, and I had tears running down my face because it brought me that great joy, like watching people stretch themselves, going into waters that their peers would view as tumultuous and not worthy of them going into the water because, my God, I could drown. And she was just putting herself out there. It blew me away that none of the sharks invested. And I thought for sure one would, just because of the human that was in front of them. But that's what I'm thinking about each time I'm out there. And I like you, this guy's not winning any awards when I'm out there racing. I've got my phone with me taking photos. The New York City Marathon, Bill, I took 90 photos, and I'm with cheerleaders, and I'm with a guy playing the bagpipes, and it's just all fun for me. And then I'll catch up with some guys that I was running with that didn't know me, but we were keeping the same pace. And I'll say, hey, when I spun off there, you made a weird face. Like, where's he going? Yeah, we're in a race. So, I mean, what are you thinking? And I'm like, well, I'm thinking that neither one of us is winning this race. And so if I cost myself 15 minutes today, I'm going to grab 90 lifetime memories taking photos. That's worth way more than the 15-minute on my time.
I've done the Escape from Alcatraz
triathlon.
Oh, I'm jealous. About 6 or 7 times. And of course, it's right in my backyard here in San Francisco. But on 1 or 2 of my times, I brought a camera with me on the swim, and I rolled over and took pictures. And now I'm a really slow swimmer, right? Really, really bad swimmer. But I've done that swim from Alcatraz at least 10 times. And those pictures, right? That the experience of what it is to be there in the water and to be, paddling along and to take in what you're doing with the other people is awesome, right? And I finished every last one of those races, some prettier, some faster than others, but that enjoy the ride.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's so much on my bucket list, and I go public with it. It's on my website, jackdalysales.com. And quite frankly, people go there and look at my bucket list and contact me and say, hey, have you done this one on your list? Because I can help you out, which is a real learning opportunity. People can't help you get what you want in life if, number one, you don't know.
I don't know. Yeah.
And number two,
no, you're good. You're good. I was
number one, if they don't know what you want, and number two, if you don't share it, right? So so what happened is I started putting things on that you could actually do 2 in a weekend or 3 in a weekend. Visit a presidential library, play a top 100 golf course, and run a marathon in a new state. So there's 3 ticks off the bucket list, and maybe you get it all done on the same weekend.
This is more of that yes and thing. You taught me this. You're like, hey, I choose my triathlons, and then I see what business I can book around it. And that's that kind of like having it all. And sometimes you have to like lead with your personal stuff first. But that designing it in from the beginning. I spent a lot of time with my long-term life plans, and I've done a variety of, I do the 1-page personal plan. I've done life book. I've done a variety of things. And then every year I create a new plan, and I've got quarterly things in all of that. How do you approach creating your plans for your life?
Yeah. So what you just went through is what you are an expert at with your coach clients, and you take them through that type of discipline. It's a proven model with rigor, and that's proven to be successful for so many companies. Well, what I said is, well, why not do the same thing with your life? Have your long-term plan, have your quarterly, have your annual. Go through the process. What do you do with your clients? You expect them to identify key performance indicators, measure those key performance indicators. I do the same thing on my personal life. You don't, as you know, you don't just show up on marathon day and run 26.2 miles.
You know, I have a dear friend once that told me that he wanted to run a half marathon with me. And I said, sure, it'd be great. And, you know, he's like, okay, I'm doing my training. And in reality, he liked the idea of it, but he was actually lying. And so he got out there and he got about 6-7 miles in before he really started to lose it. Now, this is a pretty like a person who's really like pretty like naturally gifted in the DNA department physically, right? But the next 5 to 7, 8 miles was brutal. And I like pep talked him. I held his hand. I fed him goo and water and like propped him up. And then he literally he looked like he was bonking and stuff as he fell across he wasn't quite crawling like Julie Moss, but he was really, and then he went to the medical tent and he was down. But like, don't put yourself in that position of not doing the training.
Well, I mean, look, you can't expect as a business person for your business to find success if you're not following the disciplines, right? I hang with a lot of salespeople, Bill, and you know they have these sales goals that they put up, their sales number and their income number and so forth. What I want them to do is I want them to identify what I call the HPAs, the high payoff activities. Spend your time on the things that will generate that revenue, generate those sales, right? Well, it's no different on our life. If you're going to try to do something of some magnitude, it requires planning. There are stages that need to take place. My favorite marathon, believe it or not, is the Polar Circle Marathon in not Antarctica, up the North Pole.
Running around the North Pole,
where it's really cold and really snowy, and it's my favorite because I did it in my 60s, and I was like saying as I'm running. By the way, the first 10K was snow to the knees, and I'm saying, my God, I'm in my 60s. I have the time available to get up here and do this. I have the money to be able to get up here and do this, and I have the health to get up here and do this. And what a magical thing this is. There are only 200 of us up here. It's sold out 3 years in advance typically. And then I crossed that finish line and said, this is really remarkable, Jack. Pinch me. It's a pinch me moment.
You know, you point to something really interesting. So there's something cool about like declaring a mountaintop, literally or figuratively, that I want to be at the top of Everest. But along the way, then you've got to learn to love mountain climbing, right? And all that comes with it. And I think that like you might say, whatever it is that you want to do, and then you've got to figure out, and because it may not come to you at first, how to love swimming or how to love climbing or how to love running or how to love whatever it is. You've got to find your connection and passion around it. And you've got to do something to keep yourself in the game, so that you can find yourself in that kind of moving moment like Julie Moss, where you're reaching for something no matter what, and you're just like pulling for it with every fiber of your being. And that kind of moment touches us all deeply. But you're one of those people, right? You're actually living in it. It affects everyone. But I think there's something about that. Like there's first the initial excitement, inspiration, and then there's embracing the whole journey of it.
Yeah. And I'm going to add one element that you didn't touch on there, Bill. And that is, you're not alone in this journey, right? As an example, at 58 years old is when I decided to take on the Ironman. After being on the list for decades, hey, I don't have employees that I have to care about. My kids are old and gone. And so I'm going to take this beast on. Well, the funny part is I did not know how to swim at 58 years old. And it's a 2.4 mile swim on the clock.
Like so swim at all or swim competitively?
I mean, I doggy paddled, never put my head in the water. right?
Uh-huh.
I could stay
Uh-huh.
afloat.
Yeah.
But I couldn't make it to the end of a 25-yard pool. So I hired a swim coach. Well, if I look at
Yeah.
triathlon sport today, I have a swim coach, I have a bike coach, I have a run coach, I have an overall triathlon coach, I have a nutritionist coach, and I have a strength coach. So I have 6 people that are helping me navigate through the journey.
Yeah.
That's to me, that's the key. You get your ego out of the way, recognize where your strengths are, and then fortress up your weaknesses with people that can do that.
You know what I think is cool that you highlight there is you don't have, I mean, I know people who debate whether it's finally time for them to get a coach, but you've got like 10 coaches at any given time in life, right?
Yeah, the number's actually 14, right?
Yeah.
And so I've got 5 on my personal goals. I have 3 on my business, and I have 6 on my triathlon. And the 5 on my personal goals, I refer to them as the board of directors of my life.
Yeah.
And
It's interesting.
and so and in order to make it onto the board, you have to care immensely about me, and you need to be tough and not take any of my bullshit. Right? You need to call me out.
Hand up to me. Yeah.
Be hard. So Bonnie, gosh, she loved me so much, but she wanted to be on my board of directors of my life. But I said, you're not qualified. And what I mean that in a loving way is I would say, hey, look, I got all this done in the quarter, but I didn't get these 4 things. And she would say, Jack, you have more done than most people. Lighten up on yourself. I don't want that from a coach. Right. So my daughter,
a particular style of coach, a coach who's really like up in your business, right? A coach.
Absolutely.
Really
so Melissa, my daughter, is 50. That just sounded horrible to me. That I have a daughter that's 50, but nonetheless, I have a 50-year-old daughter that's 3 degrees, all scholarships, just high performer in every dimension. There's no way that I'll ever show up at Melissa for my one-on-one, which happens 4 times a year with each one of my 5 board of directors in my life. I'm just not going to show up and say, well, I wrote those goals down, but I got distracted with other things in life. That would not be a good mentor for her, a good role model for her. And she, quite frankly, would say, Dad, I got a lot of things going on in my life. I don't have time for you if you're not going to be serious about what you asked me to do.
Let's talk about failure for a minute, because you've had some setbacks and there's maybe other things that I don't know about, but so when you get a skin cancer, when you get handed COVID, like we all did, when you find yourself knocked down with things and your plan and you come up short, how do you deal with that? Where do you come up short? I think you've had a concussion, you've had some other injuries. Talk about that.
Yeah. Look, there's a great saying by Woody Allen, and I apply it in my business and my personal life. When you see an angry mob coming towards you, get in front and call it a parade. And so protect the 6 inches between your ears. I fell off my bike and broke my collarbone, bruised 3 ribs. And had a concussion and cut my head open, 17 stitches here. And I was out for 40 minutes. I'll never have those 40 minutes. And I had an Ironman race that I was training for that was just 4 weeks away in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And the doc said, there's no way that we can get you better by then. So, okay, I planned on doing Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, Ironman. That's off the docket. But I should be better before the end of the year. So find a replacement Ironman, which I found in Napa Valley, and did the Ironman in Napa Valley. Right. And so, I had to make a change. Look, we were all faced with our plans being changed in March of 2020. And, we go into full lockdown. Now, here I am as a speaker. What do? I travel the world and I speak to large groups of people. Well, that was those 2 things were not in play. So within a month of lockdown, I did 2 things. I said, I'm going to write the book that I haven't written, which is Jack Daly's Life by Design, and help other people lead an exceptional life, as you say, however they would determine exceptional life. And the second thing I'm going to do, because I think this thing's going to last at least 2 or 3 or 4 years, and I need to have accessibility of the public to me with what I teach. So I brought in a crew, and I had them build a professional studio. I'm broadcasting today from my office at home, but I have an entire room that's been redone as a studio with the proper lighting and all of those types of things. And so I want you to think, March is the lockdown, but check this out. By June, I had set a Guinness World Record, and it was for the largest attendance for a virtual business conference of 21,261 people. And I'm in my 70s and said, well, this is not my forte, speaking to a camera in a room with nobody here. But I need to figure this out if I'm going to be able to impact people in a positive way. And so figure it out. So the message is, we have different things come upon us, and it ruins our existing plans. So make new ones. Bonnie got diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer in February of 17. Well, I had a full plan for 2017 that literally went into the dumpster, and then said, okay, within the confines of now what I'm dealing with, the person that I met at 16 years old and have been with for 52 freaking years needs me all the time. What can I do while I'm home helping her fight the battle? Right?
Yeah.
Life happens.
Life happens, things happen, we have setbacks, and then there's what can you do in the face of it, right? Like replanning, adjusting, adapting to what goes on, because you just, who knows?
Focus on that which you have control over. I live in San Clemente, California. It's known as a surfing mecca, and I run the coast all the time, and I'm watching the surfers, and I never surfed. And so I decided to hire a coach and teach me how to surf. The problem is that when I had my concussion, I lost my ability to balance. I have to hold on to something to put a pair of pants on. So I didn't even connect the two until I got out in the ocean and tried to get on that board. As much as I practiced in the gym with all of the tools that the coach had, when I hit the water, I hit the water. There wasn't much standing up going on, and all I could do is last for like a second or two. And so that was a sport that I had to pass on, right? Even if it was on my bucket list. Hey, I just don't have that. So go find something else to do, right?
Yeah, it's really, really great. So, what are the things that you want to impress on? Like, what are your key points for folks wanting to begin this journey for themselves? Talk to us a little bit about your process. I know it's going to be in the book, and folks should go to Amazon and get the book here, Life by Design by Jack Daly. But talk to us a little bit about kind of the next steps for folks.
Yep. The good news is in the book are an appendix filled with templates for them to follow. It's no different than the Scaling Up book with the templates that we could use to run our businesses. And so these are the templates that I used in building my life. And then in the appendix also is them filled out with my stuff on certain years that I used them, so that you could see illustratively. Do I expect people to be able to get to theirs to the level of mine? No, mine is so deep, so broad. But we have to recognize I've been doing this for 60 years, right? And so, how to eat an elephant a bite at a time. So it's getting into the process and putting a few down. Karen is now into her 3rd year, and she's doing remarkably well, but hers are nowhere near the ambitiousness that mine reflect, right? So for me, it's simple. Keep it simple. Goals in writing. Don't pick too many. Put a time or an event that's going to say, I got it done. Have a system of measurement. and a system of accountability, people to hold you accountable. So, I've been posting them on my website, and people can see them. Well, when I post my goals on my website, I got a whole 7 billion people potentially holding me accountable. I show up at speaking events and guys come up to me beforehand and go, "Hey, how you doing on this? And how you doing on that?" I can't run away from the public nature of my goals, which then it helps me get there. I log every day. I log every day, everything I do each day onto this diary, and then I summarize it at the end of the month, and then I go public with it. And again, in the interest of inspiring people, but people know that I'm doing that, and as a result, that accountability process is there. And there are apps out there that we can track and measure and report and so forth. I've been old school from 13. I'm gonna take it out all the way
The
to
paper logbook.
yeah. And I've got them sitting over there in the library here in my office, and they're all just stacked up year by year by year. It's a pretty cool thing.
It's really cool. And if you think about in any domain, people who meticulously track and count things, right there, you get what you want. You look at the life of John D. Rockefeller. It began very early on in his career with a logbook. He kept track of his money. He ended up with an awful lot of money, right?
look, I was in Little Rock, Arkansas to run the Arkansas Marathon. That was the state, right?
Yeah.
And I had to get there a couple days beforehand. And so I never been there. I thought I'd tour the city. And I came upon Bill Clinton's presidential library. And it was fantastic. And when I finished, they gave you a little folder, and it said, "Here are all the other presidential libraries in the United States." There were 13 of them. And so I said, "Wow, that'd be a cool thing to do. I'll go put that on my bucket list." Well, I've completed that. And I can tell you that you learn so much from these people that got to the presidential position. It doesn't matter what your party affiliation is. There are commonalities amongst these successful people, and I'm going to call success becoming president of the United States. And so many of them are keeping diaries. So many of them have their goals in writing. And I'll mention this one because this is something that I teach salespeople. So many of them are great at writing handwritten notes to people. And imagine getting a handwritten note from the president of the United States. And so business owners, business leaders, I would challenge them. How many handwritten notes are you writing? Karen owns and runs a significant size company. And she has a goal of writing somewhere in the neighborhood of about 500 written notes. And she tracks and measures it in a similar fashion that I do. My goal this year, I think, is to write 180 handwritten notes, and I track and measure it every day as to whether I'm doing it. And look, I finished my 100th marathon in Athens, Greece, on the original marathon, and a person went and produced a personal card with me off of my Facebook, ripping the picture off and designing this card. And it's sitting here on my desk, and I don't know that I'll ever take it down. That this individual went to the effort to do this.
Thoughtful. It's personal, right? John Rulin sent you a coffee mug at one
Absolutely.
point. Similar. Like, do you do things that are deeply thoughtful and personal and connected that expresses something?
This is a one of a kind. It was an incredible thing to get this. And but as simple as a handwritten note is one of the magics. And the more that we're electronically tied, and the more we're texting people and emailing people, the handwritten note becomes more vintage. It becomes more special. And so I'm in pursuit all of the time of what can I learn to be a better human. Karen won me over last year to Audible books. I had a goal for a long time on my bucket list to read 52 books in a year. Last year, I crushed it because I went Audible and did 104. And we share the same account. And when we read a book, if we really got value out of it, we just tell the other person. And so then we have conversations about it. And then what are the takeaways? And, I just want to learn more and be more of a person. There's just this magical world out there. Why not grab it all? Grab it as much as you can, right?
Here's a funny side question. What do you call it? Do you say read a book if you listen to it?
I do.
I'm like,
I do. And you know what? One of the things I'm wondering, I just came out of the studio recording my new book. And so the final editing is supposed to be done on Friday.
Yes.
I'm wondering what speed people will be listening to on my Audible book, right? Because most of the books I listen to, I'm 1.5.
Yeah, I listen mostly at 1.5. 2 is usually a little too fast, but it depends on the speaker as well, right? How quickly they go.
Right.
Well, listen, I want to a couple shout outs before we get done. If our show was helpful to you in any way, please pass it along, share it to somebody else, like it, and subscribe to get them every week. You'll find our show pretty much everywhere that you might get podcast content, YouTube and iTunes and Stitcher, etc. You can drop us a note if you want to give us feedback, get in touch, ask for a follow up on anything, or just say hi. Tell us how the show impacted you in some way. The email to send to is info@scalingcoach.com. You can just send an email to info@scalingcoach.com. I want to give big thanks to the creator of Scaling Up, Vern Harnish, author and creator of our Scaling Up framework. Our show is produced by Wanda Mitchell. Our audio is edited by Albert Burge at Podfly Productions. Our show notes are written up by Ann Cadena and proofread by Tim McGowan. I want to thank Jack Daly for coming on the show. If you haven't picked up on it yet, it's in the crawl there, and you want to go get the book at Amazon.com. Jack Daly's Life by Design. Jack, thanks so much for joining us today. We hope everyone gets a lot from the show and the conversation. I know I did.
Can I add one thing?
Well, one thing, yeah.
Jack Daly's Life by Design is a brand new website. And the entire appendix, which is over 100 pages of templates and so forth, free to anyone who goes there. Jack Daly's lifebydesign.com.
Jack Daly's lifebydesign.com as well. Go there. Thanks again, everyone, for listening, for watching. Keep scaling up. We'll talk to you again next time. Bye-bye.